key to any sale is about the exit criteria. What are the pieces of information and activities that need to have occurred in the exchange of the conversation to move a deal forward?
This is Sales Hacker, a podcast for modern sales professionals who are looking to create more pipeline and close more deals. In each episode, we explore the latest sales tips, tactics, and strategies from leading industry pros that will teach you how to capture and connect data, streamline workflows, and do mission-critical work smarter so you can create opportunities more efficiently and close deals more predictably.
This episode of the Sales Hacker podcast is sponsored by Pavilion. Pavilion is the key to getting more out of your career. Our private membership connects you with a network of thousands of like-minded peers and resources where you can tap into dozens of classes and training through Pavilion University. Make sure you take advantage of the Pavilion for Teams corporate membership and enroll your entire go-to-market team in one of our industry-leading schools and courses, including Marketing School, Sales Development School, and Revenue Operations School. Unlock your professional potential and your team's professional potential with a Pavilion membership. Get started today at joinpavilion.com. Once again, that's joinpavilion.com.
As a small or medium-sized business owner, you're frustrated about having to personally run operations and grow sales for your company. You're at the stage where you need to make scalable moves. Get to your next level of growth with Overpass, the first of its kind global SDR marketplace. With hiring assistance from real people, you can onboard sales reps from around the world for a fraction of the cost. The solution to your growth is only a few clicks away. Create a free account today at overpass.com.
This episode of the Sales Hacker podcast is brought to you by Outreach. Outreach is the first and only engagement and intelligence platform built by revenue innovators for revenue innovators. Outreach allows you to commit to accurate sales forecasting, replace manual process with real-time guidance, and unlock actionable customer intelligence that guides you and your team to win more often. Traditional tools don't work in a hybrid sales world. Find out why Outreach is the right solution at click.outreach.io/30MPC. That is click.outreach.io/30MPC.
We have with us today on the Sales Hacker podcast, Richard Harris. Richard has been a longtime friend of the Sales Hacker community. Actually, you've been around Sales Hacker longer than I have.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say you helped build it from the early days with Max and Scott and Gaetano.
I would say that it was mutual. Like, I think Max had already built it. It was a really strong LinkedIn community for in the 2012, 2013, 2014 era, right? Like, everything was done in LinkedIn. It was weird that LinkedIn killed all those communities.
I know.
Right. And it was just sort of random that, I met him at an event. I want to say it was the first Sales Loft Rainmaker, if I'm not mistaken. And then a few weeks later, he and I got in touch, and he occasionally got these like training requests coming to Sales Hacker. So we just sort of worked out a deal. And so I'd get those requests, and then he's like, I need to step away. Will you host some of the webinars? And so then he built my brand, and Sales Hacker helped build my brand, I think, as much as anything. So I'm very, very grateful to Sales Hacker as a whole and Max. And yeah, I think I was there. I don't think Gaetano was there yet. Maybe he had just gotten there or was just coming after I did, but it was old school, and it was fun, and have a fond memory of Sales Hacker, and still do stuff with y'all all the time and in the community as well. So I've been around for a bit.
My favorite thing about like how the contributorships work is that when so there are like a lot of articles by you on our site, and they still get, thousands of visits every month. So like it's almost like you keep contributing over and over again.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're super grateful. So yeah, for the listeners, if you don't know Richard, you should check him out on LinkedIn, Richard Harris. He is founder and CEO of the Harris Consulting Group. He also runs Surf and Sales with Scott Leese, which is a really cool community and program. You take people surfing. And is it Costa Rica?
Yeah, that's where we go every year, a couple of times.
He also got the Surf and Sales podcast, which I encourage our listeners to check out. And so, yeah, like I originally, when I came on board as Sales Hacker about 4 or 5 years ago now, I was talking to Gaetano. Sorry, listeners, this is a little inside baseball, but I want to tell you how Richard and I know each other. I was talking to Gaetano, who at the time was leading growth at Sales Hacker, and I said, "Hey, Gaetano, who do I have to know?" And Richard, your name was actually the first name on the list. So before my first day at Sales Hacker, I hit you up on LinkedIn, I remember, and I said, "Hey, hi, Richard, I'm Colin. I'm going to be running growth at Sales Hacker, and I have no idea what I'm doing." And you
Yep.
were so friendly and gracious, and you always have been.
Thank you.
We've met in person a few times. Last time we saw each other was San Francisco, right?
Yeah, a few months ago, there was a event you were doing. Where was that? I don't remember. It was on a rooftop, and I was like so excited to be outside.
It was such a nice day too.
Yeah.
That was like the first warm weather in a bit. Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for doing the podcast with me today. Like I said earlier, I've got a bunch of things that I've kind of always wanted to ask you and just never had the opportunity. So I'm going to
Go
do
for it.
this as an
What you
excuse.
got?
We can talk about whatever you want to. So one thing I realized, I was kind of prepping for this conversation, and I was like, oh, I actually don't know how you got into sales and then how you got into, founding your own sales consulting company. Can you just give me you've probably done this origin story a bunch of times, but can you give me an overview of how you came to be what you are today?
Yeah, I'll go quick so as not to bore people. I'm one of the rare people who probably knew I wanted to be in sales. I certainly knew I wanted to be in business. My very first job, this is in the 80s, so I'm really dating myself, was working at the Gap in sales. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And it was in high school, and you got 30% off your clothes and 50% off a couple of things each month. So, I was sort of fashion forward. This is so old. This is how old the Gap is. A lot of people don't know this, is that the Gap didn't even sell their own jeans. All they sold were Levi's. And so I was there I remember when the first set of jeans came out. They actually went to women first. And I thought that was interesting. And they explained, this is the 80s. And certainly the gender dynamics were shifting, but still women were doing a lot of the shopping for the family, particularly for the kids or their husbands. And so they knew the women were there, and guys don't like to go in and try on clothes. So they just sort of had this smart idea. And so I was there for that. The first sales process I ever learned is called Gap Act: greet, approach, product knowledge, add on, close, and thank you. Every time I walk into the Gap, I know exactly what they're doing. So that's sort of where I first got my foray into it. Fast forward, I went back and worked for them again out of college. And that was my first job, because I wanted to wear real job, I would say, where, I wanted to wear jeans and t-shirts post graduation from college. I was a manager, did a bunch of whole other sales jobs along the way. Eventually had my last real job in San Francisco at a startup called Mashery. They were getting acquired by Intel. I'd been there about 13 or 14 months, maybe 18 months. And I was getting laid off because they didn't need my role when Intel bought them. But I learned a ton. So that's actually how and where I met John Barrows. So I got laid off, had a couple of interviews, kind of got to that 4th or 5th round interview, couldn't get over the hump. Then this one person I'd met a year before asked me to come on and do I wasn't going to move to Austin. And so the next thing I knew, I had this consulting gig, I don't know where, one summer for a month in Austin, Texas. And then on my first plane ride home that first week, I sat down on the plane. This is 2013. I sat down on the plane next to Nick Meda and
Wow.
Gainsight, but they were 15 employees.
Wow.
And he and I had this fabulous conversation for 2 hours. We got shushed by the flight attendant twice. We weren't drinking at all. It was like a Friday
Just
night.
really excited.
Yeah. So next thing I knew, I had 2 clients paying me for 30-day engagement. So that's 6 months salary in 60 days. And I called John Barrows and I said, John, what do you think? And he's like, Richard, it doesn't happen this way. He's like, I know you could do it. John had talked about trying to bring me on back at that point, but he wasn't ready. The business model wasn't quite ready for me. And then, so I just went for it, and that's how I became a consultant. Right. So that's the long version. The short version is, well, how'd you become a consultant? Well, I got fired. Right. So, although I didn't really get fired, Mashery did a really nice job. They hugged me out the door. So I have a lot of appreciation for Orrin and Rock and Kristen over there who were part of the leadership team that really made sure that, my family didn't struggle for a while I was trying to figure out my transition. And then
That's huge.
consulting thing just fell in my lap. So that's how it happened.
I had no idea that you and John Barrows went back like that.
Yeah, we had hired him at Mashery, and then I just connected with the guy and really liked him, and I stayed in touch with him. And, I think he knew that I was capable of training and coaching because he sort of saw how I was doing stuff. Although you'd have to ask him. You have to ask him, what was your thought of Richard Harris? I should ask that question. But he's the one who sort of gave me the kick in the pants. And so every time people call me to ask, I tell them this story, and I say, I'm constantly paying it forward for John giving me the kick in the pants to tell people, yeah, you can go do this. You should do this. If you really want to do it, here's how you can do it. And I'm happy to give you advice. So yeah, I always try to pay that forward.
That is so cool. And also, by the way, I'm astounded that you remember the sales methodology from the Gap Act.
It's weird. I can also tell you, so, after Gap, I worked at this, what was called the alternative weekly paper, the Think Village Voice, not the word alternative the way it is these days politically. So it was sort of this cool, hip weekly paper. And I remember my very first, I sold classified ads, the ads in the back of the paper. And we used to cold call, I'm not kidding, out of Rolling Stone magazine. Right. And so in the back of Rolling Stone magazine, for those who know, I cold called this woman named Opal Phillip, a psychic, runs an ad in the back of Rolling Stone. And she was my first 52-week contract ever. And she was paying us, I think, $7.20 a week for her.
Oh, way.
Ad. So that's my first cold call sale. So yeah, I think we all kind of remember our firsts of certain things in business. And those are my two first. So yeah. So Opal in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't know if she's still around. I appreciate you.
That's incredible. Yeah. We know Opal, if you're listening, and we know that you are. Thank you for hooking Richard up with his first annual contract.
Yeah. Exactly. What else?
That methodology thing about the Gap Act is actually another one of the things I wanted to pick your brain on. And I got to say, I've kind of avoided asking you this because I don't know how to ask it without, I hope you're not sensitive about your age, without asking you in a way that makes you feel old.
Dude, don't worry. I make jokes about it all the time.
Okay. Because the thing is, lately at Sales Hacker, right? We're in this time where, especially in tech, the people are getting obsessed with efficiency, abandoning the growth at all costs mindset. And the way that we're seeing that manifest at Sales Hacker, at least I think, is people are starting to research sales methodologies more and getting back to fundamentals. So we're seeing an increase in rise in MEDDPIC, MEDDIC, BANT, and then you've got that great article on Sales Hacker about neat selling for your own sales. I don't know if you would call it a methodology, kind of philosophy, methodology, and process.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask this: how, over the arc of your career in sales, do you see this? Is this cyclical? A focus on methodology comes around every now and then. Are there methodologies that people have kind of always have always found useful, or is there some kind of change in the methodologies that used to work don't fundamentally work now because of the buyer?
It's a really good question. So, I'm probably biased because of what I do. So my answer is based on what I see, experience, and believe. So I just want people who are listening to recognize that maybe I'm full of shit. I don't know, but people can call me out and won't offend me, for those of you. I'm not like most older people. I think this has always been around. I think the idea of a process has gotten more mainstream credibility because it's been talked about so much. And I have to credit social for that. And I have to probably credit LinkedIn for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm of the generation where you didn't Google shit. That didn't exist. Right. I could tell you about having to go to the library and, looking on microfiche for, old newspaper articles. And half of you probably don't even know what the fuck that is. So think really film. I don't even know what film is in the camera, but anyway. So I think that the access to the knowledge of these things has gotten better and greater. I also think that the generational acceptance of finding and trying new has gotten better. I see, I definitely saw it in the millennials, when, and I'm talking earlier millennials where they were just they had more access to information than I ever did. And I was jealous of that. right? So they came in smarter than me and I felt threatened. I remember, I didn't get into SaaS, turn 54 later this week, April 1st. And I remember when I was turning 40, I was 39 and really getting into my first real tech job. And I thought I was old. I thought no tech company was going to hire me, all these things. Right. And I think a lot of people feel that way when they get to that age, and it doesn't have to be tech. It could be anytime you have to make that change at that age, it's scary, right? Cause you're on this, you feel like you're on this other side of things. So come back to your question. The process stuff has always been there. I think the access to it has been there. I think the data is now better. I think also the advent of the CRM. It's interesting. I just traded tweets with the founder, and again, how old I am. Goldmine, which was the first CRM. Like I need to talk to this guy and ask him like, what happened? How did Salesforce eat your lunch?
I feel bad. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it was great, but it did a lot of the same stuff, but I don't know where it fell off. Right. So anyway, so I think the process has been there. I don't think the process has changed that much since Mesopotamia in the Bible.
Yeah.
I think that the key to any sale is about the exit criteria. What are the pieces of information and activities that need to have occurred in the exchange of the conversation to move a deal forward? And so that's why, MEDDIC, MEDDPIC, NEAT, all of them are really good when it's the right one for you. I am not, like I just told this to a client, if you're using MEDDIC, do not rip and replace just because your new VP of sales or CRO comes in and says they want to rip and replace. If the old system isn't working, probably a good chance because it wasn't defined with the right exit criteria. And probably more importantly, it wasn't coached to regularly. So if MEDDIC works for you, then stick with it. Don't rip and replace and put NEAT in the system, or any other process. It's really understanding what you're doing, because that's just going to delay your execution anyway. So my whole thing is make sure you have a process that's consistent based on exit criteria, not based on the staging names and which one is best. There are the right ones for certain people. MEDDIC is really good, in my opinion. Someone can correct me, please. I think MEDDIC's great when you have a larger sales cycle with longer sales cycle and larger deals. If you got a 30-day sales cycle, I'm not always convinced MEDDIC is the right one. It might be too robust. It might be too much. It doesn't mean you don't get those same things that you get in MEDDIC for your sales cycle. You still do. It just depends on how you define it and your exit criteria. So I'm a big fan of those folks. My, NEAT selling is defined for me by the prospect. For some people, it's a process and we put it in the system. For others, it's a methodology that goes in the system. And for others, it's just a philosophy. It's driving to need, the economic impact of that need, access to authority and timeline. Well, that's really any different than anything else. I just created it on myself, to be different and trademarked it, like just to sort of, have something to draw a line in the sand. So that's my real opinion of all these things. So a lot of times, NEAT becomes a bolt on to a MEDDIC or a Challenger or anything else, because they're still trying to drive to the same thing. And I don't think people need to rip and replace. That's such a waste of time. It's not necessary.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. I've seen a couple of enablement leaders who their thing is they have like a favorite methodology, and they'll go into a company and, for the first 6 months, they spend it cleaning up and convincing the rest of leadership to change methodologies.
Yeah.
And then they spend the next 6 months transitioning to their favorite.
Yeah.
And then they spend the next 6 months failing with that favorite. And then they go do the same thing in another company.
And then they leave because their tenure's 18 months, right? I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do to go do that, to rip and replace. I'm just saying it's the first thing. Like if you're being interviewed for a revenue, the most important thing that needs to be discussed in the interview, in my opinion, is how fast can we start driving revenue? Because you're being brought in to make change. You're being brought in to drive revenue, not build a process. It's revenue first, process second. And you can actually run them in parallel. You totally can. But it's kind of like if I'm a sales leader, the first thing I'm doing is jumping on calls. I'm training my team because guess what? I sold without CRM. It can be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Like telling me you need to have the process in the system to get it done.
Right. It's not a
Now,
hard dependency.
yeah. And again, there's a lot of, well, it depends. Look, if I'm General Electric or Zoom, well, there is going to be some level of process that needs to occur to scale this. However, I still got sales reps on the phone tomorrow. I could give two shits how it's tracked in the CRM if I've got reps missing opportunity to close revenue tomorrow. That's the priority. And you then can work through the other stuff.
Do you say that like the priority is revenue fast because the tenure is 18 months? Or do you think the
Yes.
tenure is 18 months because
No, I think,
people aren't doing it quickly?
Well, there are two reasons. I think one of it, that's how I'm wired, right? I really am very good at that tactical stuff, coming in and getting really grinding on that stuff faster. I have an impatience for sitting down with marketing and redefining the lead criteria and redefining the definition. Like, I'll do it and I'm happy to do it. I just get impatient because I'm pretty accurate about it. And I think that maybe that's part of my old age, but I was like this at 40 anyway. I was like this at 25. So, sort of a know-it-all. I was entitled long before millennials came along. So I struggle, and this is why I think you have a good board of directors around you personally and professionally, to help me on the strategy side. Like Scott Leese is one of my go-to guys. John Barrows is one of my go-to guys. Like, hey, I'm doing this. You guys know me. I do tact. Like, I jump in and I can train tomorrow and we make this, revenue change. So I think I'm a little biased and predisposed that way because that's how I operate as a human. I know that there are other humans who operate strategically first. And I know there are other really great humans who can operate strategically and tactically at the same time.
I always find that so impressive when you see someone that can do that. Because I can't at all. I'm kind of one of those strategic first people.
Right.
But so like a good example is Mark Cosaglow. He's leading sales at Catalyst now.
Yeah.
And watching him document his journey as CRO and seeing the changes that he's making quickly while also building a process that can help that company scale, so impressive.
Yep. Totally agree. Totally agree. So, and I love Mark. I think he's great. Mr. Krillin. If you don't know that about him, go Google Mark Cosaglow and look at his LinkedIn stuff about Krillin. KRILLIN.
Yeah.
So,
one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was your hashtag shit my sales manager used to say.
Yeah. I haven't done that one in a while. It comes originally from Kevin Gaither, who's a good friend of mine, who you should have on this podcast, by the way.
I'll look him up.
And if you don't know KG, he built ZipRecruiter. He's one of the rarefied people. This is why you should talk to him. He built the ZipRecruiter sales team from 0 to 500 employees. 500.
Oh, holy crap.
Over like 6 or 7 years. Like that, one, that's impressive. Two, we all know the average tenure isn't anywhere near that. So he's a strategy tactic guy. In fact, he and I've done some things and he he jokes that I'm like, KG, just do it. Like, let's just do it. He's like, no, get out there, doc. I'm like, okay, knock yourself out. So, so that was his phrase, like was shit my sales manager used to say. And so I asked him if I could use it and he's so I just started tagging it all the time and stuff on LinkedIn. And I've actually gone and pulled them all. And, years ago, I was like, oh, I should write a book called Shit My Sales Manager Used to Say. Ironically, KG, if y'all haven't followed him, Kevin Gaither, he just put a book out, self-published called, I Heard It on the Sales Floor, which is very similar to this, probably a little more perfume, but people should go read it. It's a fun book and it's smart and it's witty. But you should definitely have KG on. So that's where that hashtag came from. Shit my sales manager used to say. And, it's lines like, oh, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the company, which is kind of bullshit because it's like, actually, they are rejecting me.
Yeah.
Part of the company.
Yeah.
Or, hey, leave your troubles at the door when you come in. You can leave all your troubles of life behind you for 8 hours a day. You can't. And look, by the way, I was a purveyor of all this bullshit too in my early management career.
That's why
I said I'm not calling this out as like, look at all these stupid people. I was one of these stupid people too. So anyhow, that's where that came from and how it existed. And then I kind of got away from it over the last few years. I thought about resurrecting it, but we'll see. We'll see.
I always loved it, but it
Yeah, it
always
was
made
fun.
so it's like for people who haven't seen it, it is Richard kind of cataloging little tongue in cheek,
Yes.
kind of ripping fun at the sales manager, and like you said, because you've been guilty of those little aphorisms before, I have too. But it made me wonder because I think we all have that, like a manager we had in the past who
Hmm.
gave us a piece of advice that echoes in our head for years and years.
Oh yeah.
What is that for you?
What are they? Like, what are the
Yeah, who was
things?
the person? What did they tell you? What was the advice that rings
Um,
around in your head?
hold on. I'm actually going to go see. I'm actually not Googling. I'm actually LinkedIn. My hashtag shit my sales manager used to say, I want to see how many of them there are. It's been 10 months since I've done my last one, but there's hundreds of them. So what were the things those managers used to say to me?
Or
Let's
any
see.
like good advice, like like a manager that unlocked something for you that you still think
Well,
of today. You're
so,
like, oh, that was
so the interesting thing is when you think about it, the shit my sales manager used to say, what it actually unlocks is the right way to do things,
Mm.
right? The irony of this is that we become successful in spite of these leaders who's told us this stupid stuff, right? Or that we even regurgitated ourselves. So it's an interesting way to sort of spin it to go, God, but it's like the thing of like, hey, they're not rejecting you. Well, it's like, it took me a long time to realize actually, yeah, as a human, I don't like rejection. Therefore, I should spend some time thinking about that and acknowledging I don't like that rejection. And what don't I like about it? And then once I at least acknowledge it, then it doesn't hurt so much. Then I
yeah,
understand it's just part of the game, right? So the other ones are, it's a numbers game, 100 dials a day. That was another one, trying to think what else, it's sort of like, oh, let me promote my best sales rep to be a manager, shit my
yeah,
sales manager used to say.
yeah,
Like, those,
yeah.
but again, if you stop and think about it, you kind of go, oh, that is funny because I've heard it so many times, but now it has also taught me something too. So it's kind of like those crappy managers and leaders we had. If we're willing to take what they attempted to teach us and relearn it in a different frame of reference, then to some weird degree, we have to be thankful for those leaders because they made us better at what we wanted to be as a human and as a leader. That doesn't mean I enjoyed it. Doesn't mean I like it. I think one of my favorites was, several come from Scott Leese because I actually worked for him at one point.
I'll see. I
And
didn't know that either.
oh yeah, I can tell you the whole story about, I wouldn't hire him, but he hired me kind of thing. I wouldn't even interview him, but he, we used to have a sales floor and we had, it was 2008. I had been a VP of sales. I got laid off because of the recession, called a buddy of mine who used to work for me. He said, call this guy, Scott Lee. Scott hired me as a sales manager. So now I went from VP of sales to a line manager. And Scott was all about coaching and coaching and coaching and being there with the reps. And if you ever saw us, there were like 5 of us. We had there were like 50 to 70 reps on the floor, and there were like 5 managers. And he would just group text us, get off your seat. Like meaning we were sitting there on our computer looking at dashboard, Excel sheets when we should be sitting with our team. So that's one of my favorites. I'm like, CPU, central, for those of you who don't know, that means central processing unit. That's what you called a computer back in the day. And it actually ages Scott more than me, even though he's about 10 years younger.
I like that though. That is a
Yeah.
good. It's strange. You see more of leadership kind of doing the opposite, insisting on a new dashboard, insisting on a
Yeah.
new presentation, and not just
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, go spend
Yeah.
time with your people."
Yeah. What else can I share with you? What
Well,
else you got?
speaking of spending some time with the people, for those of you who are listening who don't know, Sales Hacker also has an online forum, and every now and then we get some really good, thoughtful questions. And so this is the first try of it, Richard, but I want to try a segment that I think we'll call like maybe good advice. And so I'm saying maybe because I want to give you an out in case you feel like you can't answer a
All
question. But
right.
we've got a bunch of questions from our users. I want to put them to you and just see how would you would answer. So the first one is from Uncle Hala. Thanks, Uncle Hala, for submitting this question. He's asking, what are the best cold call opening lines?
So there's a couple things. By the way, people can call out my bullshit anytime, and write this down: 415-596-9149, 415-596-9149. That's my legit cell phone number, not some bullshit number. Text me if
confirm.
you want to call me out on any advice I give you here or anywhere else. Like, you can text me. You can even post it in LinkedIn. I just texted Richard. You should text him too. He's full of shit about blah, 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 blah. So cold call opening lines. One of my favorites is actually from Corporate Bro. I asked him this question a couple years ago. I said, what's your favorite line? And he goes, your mom said I should call you. And I was like, oh my God, that's genius. And I'm like, well, what do you do if, like, the person's mother's deceased, or, you know, they're really sick or has cancer? He's like, you know, you apologize and say, look, I'm just trying to sound different. Yeah, it's a sales call. You know, apologies. Here's why I'm actually calling. Right. So it's a good pattern in a row. So I love that one. Mine equivalent, if you're a humor person, is to say, oh, wow, someone actually picked up the phone. You just made my day.
I like that one a lot.
You know, that's, you know, and you don't have to say you just made my day, but people feel good when they feel like, when you make someone else feel good because they think they've done a nice thing, they feel good and they'll listen. And oh, wow, someone picked up the phone. Well, first of all, that's true. It is like fucking, oh, wow, someone picked up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my other favorite one is, look, I know you're busy, so I promise I'll be brief. And if you don't like what I have to say, just hang up on. Like, again, just for me, it's just like, put it out there. The other one would be, hey, Colin, it's Richard. And yes, I bet I'm your 5th or 6th cold call today. Which one is it? Another one I've used that's similar to that is, hey, I heard the over under today is 5 cold calls for sales. How many have you gotten today? Right. And so again, people, you know, so they're going to hang up on you and stuff like that. Now, if I've got a very specific TAM and I've only got 1 or 2 people I can call, I'm conscious that maybe the humor doesn't work.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think it does, you know, and I also come from this point of view of like, I don't give a shit. Like, I can get on the phone for any company and cold call, but I don't have the quota. It's not my pressure. I'm not under scrutiny. It's February. It's March 2023. You know, my company isn't thinking about, hopefully, you know, my company's thinking about doing layoffs and all that stuff. So some of these things that I'm recommending, particularly on the humor side, you know, I can respect anyone who's got a different frame of reference than I do. Like, the pressure I feel is very different than someone who has a traditional job. So I'm conscious of this, and I'm conscious of my snarkiness and my, you know, attempt to be sarcastically funny and wise at the same time, that not everybody can do that. So I do want to be mindful of that. But those are my favorites.
I like them. I do like it when people, you know, take a gamble. Like that one from Corporate Bro, my mom told me I should call you, is a real gamble. Like, it could go south. It definitely does go south.
I do it 10 times. You know, this is what I encourage people. If you're listening to this and you're going to try some of these cold call lines, right? Go to, you know, you got a list of 100 count, right? You want to try these, try them on 100, 99, and 98. Don't try them on number 1, right? Don't try it with your Fortune brands. Try it with the other one for a couple of reasons. 1, you only get 1 shot of the big companies in some cases. And 2, you got to make it sound like you. And the first time you do it, you're going to be nervous. Even if you practice it 100 times. Hey, your mom said I should. Hey, mom said. Hey, your mom said I should. Right? You could, you know, try to Chandler Bing it if you want. But even if you practice it 100 times, it's still going to be nerve-wracking the first time you try it. So don't try and do it on the most important accounts, right? Maybe even try and call them on dead accounts, just so you can get your rhythm and see what people's respond. That's my recommendation.
That's a good recommendation.
So that's the tactic for me.
Shouts out to you, Uncle Holla. Hopefully you find that helpful. The next question I wanted to put to you from the forum on saleshacker.com comes from Salesathon. So thanks, Salesathon, for this question. I'm actually going to read you this one, Richard. So bear with me here. Salesathon says, hello, everyone. I wonder what the ratio between new sales and account management should be. Work in translation and localization industry. We're trying to determine ratio between them in terms of annual revenue. And in other words, like, how do I set goals for how much revenue my account management team should be bringing in versus my account executives team should be bringing in?
That's a really good question. I like it. Particularly now, again, it's March, April 2023, when you're hearing this. The theory is, it's easier to upsell a current customer than to sell a new one, right? That could be a shit my sales manager used to say. That becomes the hypothesis you have to prove in your organization. The challenge, though, is the data. And there are a couple of pieces you have to look at. So one, are the people who are account managers wired to sell and want to sell, cross-sell, upsell? That's not always the case. There's a reason sometimes account managers, they're very good at that relationship, servicing the account, supporting the account. They feel like sales is a dirty word, even though they're really good at it. And by the way, I'll tag customer success along with account manager. Again, it's very different, right? Sometimes customer success is just onboarding, and account management is managing it, and AEs are closing it. That's a whole other conversation, but they tag together sometimes, customer success, account manager, depending on how you define it. So part of it is, do you have the right people in the right role? The other part of it is, well, what is the goal? Let's say you had the right people in the right role. How many of your current customers currently upsell? How often? How long does it take? Regardless of who's doing it. If we then put a person in charge of it, how many accounts could they manage? And it then becomes a bandwidth issue, right? I don't know that an account manager with 200 accounts could upsell 200 accounts, right? Now, you might force rank them. You might say, okay, we're going to go after the top 10%, or we're going to go here, we're going to go there. So it's a personnel issue and a math equation, and it's a hypothesis. And if you don't have the data, this is the other thing. If you're asking me this question and you have no data, then all you're trying to do right now is establish a baseline to what you think it can be. And then you can't get angry if your hypothesis is wrong. If you think you can get 30% growth out of your current customers and you have no data to support it, and then you're going to fire someone because they didn't get 30%, they only got 18%. Well, fuck you. Maybe your data was wrong, right? Now, maybe your data was right and it's the wrong person, but that doesn't mean it's that person's fault, particularly if you didn't go in and train them and coach them. So it's not a single answer, right? It's a capacity issue. And I think, my recommendation is to say to the CEO, okay, Mr. or Mrs. CEO, CRO, please, you look at the day, you know your sales cycles, you know your customers, you know what the cost is, you know what the decision-making process is better than you. But how many accounts could you, as a perfect salesperson, because you're the closer, right? Could you actually physically handle in a week or a month? And then probably cut that by 20% because you theoretically should have more knowledge. You should be able to close more if you're the founder because you just inherently know it better. So anyway, so that's the first part of the equation. This is a really good question. I've never answered it this way. So I think I want to get it from you. We should turn this into a post on that.
I like that answer a lot because I have a feeling this person was looking for you should expect 70% of your revenue from new business.
And you know what? And believe me, again, there's so much, it depends. And I'll also go so far as to say this. There could be someone who focuses on account management and customer success more than I do in the role, and they may have a better answer than I do. I'm glad
that's why we call it maybe good
advice. In time there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Do you have time for one more? We've got one more.
I got plenty of time. Keep going, man. I think I blocked this for an hour, so keep going.
Do you know more?
This is the fun stuff, by the way, because these are the questions I don't normally get. So I love this. I love this format.
That's why I like them too, because I look at these questions. These are the questions I don't even normally think of.
Right.
I think about sales a lot. I mean, it's my job. Running Sales Hacker is what I do. And a couple of these surprised me. Do you know more, Aseline?
Yes, I know I'd have to go look it up.
Look them up.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
So Moore asked this question. Here's a recent scenario that happened to one of my clients that AEs and sales leaders deal with all the time, Moore says. One of your AEs no longer works at the company, so their deals get transferred over to another AE.
Yep.
As that new AE, what is the best way to handle these leads?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a great question. And this could, you know what, this could actually go back to the first question you asked of a great opening line, which is to say, I'm your new account manager. Right? Because whether you're the new rep and it's a net new account, you're the new account manager. If you're inheriting an account, I'm the new account manager. Right. You know, again, another funny way to do that too is to try to incorporate, I'm here to make all your dreams come true.
I love
I'm your
it.
new account manager.
You know
Right.
what? I actually use that one. I have been in
Me,
this boat. You just reminded me. Yeah, I worked at a marketing agency as an account manager. And to the point you were making earlier, I was not a closing, like, new revenue kind of person. I did not want to upsell at all. But I got a book of accounts handed to me from somebody that left the role. And there was one account that I knew was having a lot of trouble getting value out of our services. So I got on the phone and called them and said, "Hey, I'm going to solve all your problems."
Yep.
And I said it jokingly because they knew it couldn't possibly be true. I, one person, am not going to make
Yep.
everything perfect, but it let them know that I'm here, I'm aware of the problems, and I'm going to do my best. They actually really liked it.
Cool. Glad you like it. What else?
That's all I had for questions from
All
from
right.
the members today. I wanted to close with this though. I was talking to Scott Ingram recently, and he put out a podcast, a short one, just himself, called Defunkification. And I let him know that I've been in a funk recently too. And it occurred to me that you are known for posting on LinkedIn and being in the conversation about sales mental health. So I wanted to ask you about your own routine. Like, what do you do to keep your mind right, in the right frame of mind, and keep yourself, happy, healthy, and motivated?
It's interesting you asked. Today is, again, I'm just going to pull out the date. Today is March 27th, 2023. I'm actually in a funk today. It's funny. I've kind of been sitting here like I'm unmotivated. What am I going to do? And so I had to really focus hard on, okay, I'm going to go write a post about something. So I went and looked for something to inspire me. So I wrote, and even though I don't feel like I'm quote unquote accomplishing a sale, for me, it's accomplishing something that I know I can use. And like, so that's one thing that I do. Two is I do step away. I will step away from the desk. I don't do it as much as I should. I actually have a walking treadmill. I'm standing on the standing desk right now. So I've got a walking treadmill that's super silent. Normally I would, probably, because I know you, I probably would have been on the walking treadmill during this session, but I've got to work out this. I don't want to, I'm old. I don't need to kill
You
myself.
don't need 2-a-days.
Right. Exactly. I don't need 2-a-days. Right. And I'm sure I'm going to have to do some fucking up downs and shit later for my virtual trainer, Mossy. If anybody wants a good virtual trainer, let me know. It's awesome.
I definitely want the name of that silent walking treadmill.
That.
One.
So it's funny. I spent hours and hours researching this years ago, and it's made in China, and there's an app for it, and there were no reviews on it, but it looked like the right one, and I love it. It's lasted a good 2.5 years, and I'm sitting here going, oh no, is this like the TikTok of treadmills? Like, how much of my health weight do they have? Right. So, like all the instructions came in Chinese, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, in today's world, you kind of wonder it, but I still love it.
Are they taking your pulse through your feet?
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, who knows, right? And then it has my email address, and this is the funny thing. I'll tangent for a second. Everybody's complaining about, well, what do they know? What do they know? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, are you not paying attention to Facebook, which is American made? Like, do you know how much information's out there about us? Please don't.
Oh, it's all to distract us from the fact that our own country has.
Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly. It's like, oh, it's like, really? You think you don't know all this information about us? Give me a break. Anyway, so that is not my detraction to something made overseas, or to any particular race or culture. So I respect everybody. I want to make sure people understand I'm not bashing it for that reason. I'm bashing it because we freak out and blame everybody else for all the lies we tell ourselves.
And ultimately you vote with your dollars, and you bought the treadmill and you use it. I use TikTok all the time, and I use every social media platform. So yeah.
All right. So what was your question? Because I derailed.
The question was, what do you do to
Mental
take care of
health.
yourself? And you said you got the standing desk, you step away.
Yeah. So exercise is important. I haven't been good at it in a while. Same with diet. Like I've actually been talking to my therapist about this, and it's like, I know what to do and I know how to do it, and I'm just lazy. And so right now I'm just going through that funk, and I'm having to try to do one thing better every day around my diet. Try to, you know, walk on my treadmill at least once or twice more a week. Here I have this walking treadmill, goes under my desk. And for the last 2 months, I bet I've used it like 5 times. And it's because I'm lazy. Like there's no reason. Like even though, again, getting old, the last 2 weeks, my lower back has started to hurt. And it's because I haven't been working out as much, and I've been kind of eating shitty. And it's kind of like, I can't make this any easier for myself than walking treadmill here. And it's nobody's fault but my own. That's one thing. I also, and this is the hard one, is I have to remember to show up authentic and nicely to myself. And I hear myself criticizing myself. You hear me criticizing myself in a sarcastic way. And I do that offline too. And I think
Yeah, me
that's
too.
probably part of the challenge, why I'm not on this treadmill enough, is that I talk negative. I beat myself. And
Yeah.
so reminding myself to be nice and kind to myself is healthy. Spring is coming, so that's good. I get to spend time with my kids, which is cool. The kids are getting to that age where they're fun and things, and so I love that. I also have to remind myself that it can't just be about them and having fun with them. I need to do things that are fun with me. I have my calendar blocked out on Wednesdays and Fridays to go play golf. I don't always go do it, but my goal this year is to do more than I did last year. So I need to, let myself go do it.
Nice.
So those are the things I do. Meditation, headspace. I need to get back into that. So there's a lot of things I've done and I preach about, and I've gotten away from them. And then all of these things for me, I don't need to meditate every day, but if I meditated once a week instead of 0 times a week, that's got to be better. It can't be worse, right? And maybe it'll turn into whatever. So
you and I have a lot in common here. I'm hard on myself in the same ways. I'm like, not eating, not exercising the way I want.
right.
And by the way, I'm giving myself an excuse because I've got a 7-week-old baby at home.
That's fair. That's a legit excuse, right? But
Yeah.
keep in mind too, if you're got a 7-week-old baby, and congratulations, it's still exercise. Even if you get up in the middle of the night and you're walking the baby up and down the hallway to get him back to sleep, that's still exercise.
Yep. And
Right?
that's really where I'm at now, is like, it's trying to stack the small wins. So instead of like, have a day where I eat perfect and get the workout and nail my work day and, read a book, just like, do 10 squats. That's better than 0 squats.
Totally. Like this morning, I got up and I did my stretches, and I haven't done
Nice.
that in a while. So there's my little win, and that's about
feels so
4
good.
minutes. I agree. The other one, this is one I do like, and I need to be better at it too. But now that it's spring, I'll be able to do it more. I encourage people to do a 6-minute walk. Walk out the door, go 3 minutes in one direction, turn around 3 minutes in another. That's really helpful just to get the blood going. And then the other one is a lot of times, I have to start reminding myself again now that spring is here, is to take some of these calls and make them on a phone call, not on a Zoom or just the Zoom audio, and walk.
Yeah.
And I can walk around my house. I don't need to go for a long walk, right? I can just go walk around, like, I've got a decent enough yard. And so I can just, walk up and down on the deck. I don't know, maybe 10 yards in direction, but if I'm going to spend 8 to 10 or 20 minutes talking to me, why not just walk for a couple of minutes? And it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are the things I do. When I really get in a funk, I will call a friend. I'll text a friend. I'll say something.
It's
I'll go
huge
watch
to have that
Corporate
support
Bro.
network.
By the way, if I really am in a funk, I need to go watch Corporate Bro. So,
Shout
shout out to Ross. Shout out to Ross Pomerantz. So,
Shout out Ross.
But and he's got a new show coming out on YouTube, so it's pretty cool. I'm excited for him.
I gotta look it up. Let's wrap up. I really appreciate the conversation and the time.
Sure.
We talked about a bunch of
any other questions people asked? We'd have to answer one more.
we can bring that's all we got for now. We can bring you back later and do some more.
Cool. I like this one. I like it where you get, crowdsourced questions. That's cool.
Let's keep it fun. I mean, honestly, the reason I did it is a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not Sam Jacobs, as everybody can tell listening to this. I'm not as experienced and knowledgeable as him. So I've got to just do what I know how to do. And what I know how to do is try
Yeah.
to
So
make this community thrive. We've got these great questions here. So
let's
I'll pull
talk about
from
that for a
the
second.
network.
Let's talk about imposter syndrome because we all get it. I get it. I get it all the time. This is part of my own mental health. And here's what I have to remind myself is you got where you are because of the work you've done, right? You've gotten to Sales Hacker because of the work you've done. While you've been at Sales Hacker, you've earned the right to run this podcast. And of course, it's natural to compare ourselves to other people. We are comparison shoppers by human nature anyway, and particularly in America. So it's natural. Again, my thought is, I would encourage you to be kind to yourself of like, holy cow, I just got to inherit this great podcast, and I think you're right. Let's show the respect to Sam to help build it for what it is, and say thank you and be kind and gracious. And then to your point, figure out what your style is. And I think that's really important. Like and that's okay. So being nervous about something different is different than having imposter syndrome. And I would encourage people to try to say to yourself, am I just nervous because I've never done it? Or is it really imposter syndrome where it's like, I don't think I'm nervous, haven't done it is different than I don't feel like I'm worthy. And they can cross, there's a gray line. And you are worthy, in my opinion, because of the work you've done. I tell this to reps all the time.
Thanks, Richard.
You're worthy to be here because you got the interview. You made it. So yeah, that doesn't mean come in and be a jerk and sound sarcastic like Richard and all that stuff. But it does mean you can come in and say, all right, I'm proud of this. Okay, now what? What do I got to do next? What's going to make me successful? What do I want to do? Right. And so trying to focus on those things. And trying to not let the imposter syndrome get you down, which it can, and it's okay. And then just trying to remind yourself, be kind to yourself.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. And for our listeners out there, if you want to be kind to me and Richard and all the other guests we have on the show, you can go to your podcast platform of choice, iTunes, Spotify, whatever, and leave us a glowing review and maybe like a 6-star rating. If they let you do 6 stars. If they don't let you do 6 stars, give us 5.
I love what I'm going to start saying that on my podcast on Surf and Sales. Go give me a 6-star review and then complain to Apple. You can't.
Yeah, that's what we
want.
I know
I'm worthy.
Thanks again for doing this, Richard. We'll have to have you back. I've got, so many folks who have helped me step into running Sales Hacker that I've got to go talk to, but we'll have you back once I make the rounds.
Dude, I'm here for you all the time, online or offline. You know that.
Appreciate you, man. We'll see you around. Bye, everybody.
Love you, brother.
Thanks for checking out Sales Hacker. If you enjoyed what you learned, subscribe to the show wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or visit saleshacker.com to get access to all of the latest episodes.